Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Black History Month program for 2021. My name is Dr. Victoria Love, and I have two children in the Pittsford Central School District. I'm also co-liaison at Mendon High School for the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Today, our featured guest is Dr. Basile Siewe. Dr. Siewe is a viral immunologist that holds a PhD in immunology from the Technical University of Munich, Germany, and is currently a director of business development at the Jackson Laboratory, a biotechnology nonprofit organization that is headquartered in Bar Harbor, Maine, with sites located across the United States and in China. Dr. Siewe's job entails guiding biopharmaceutical companies and academic biomedical research groups in their research and drug development efforts. Basile's work contributes to the development of treatments for cancer, autoimmunity, infectious disease, and other conditions. Before the transition to a position that supports the pharmaceutical industry in 2014, Basile held a junior faculty position at Rush University in Chicago, Illinois, and focused on understanding the science of human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, infection. During that time, he volunteered and fundraised for HIV causes. Basile, originally from Cameroon, West Central Africa, moved to Germany, then eventually to the US. He currently lives with his family in San Diego, California. So I'd like to take a moment to welcome you, Basile, to our Black History Month program. We truly appreciate your time and willingness to speak with our community. How are you doing today?
Hi, Victoria. Thank you for having me, and we're happy to participate in this. I think it's a great cause, so happy to make time for this. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to start off just by asking you, what was your life like as a young person growing up in Cameroon? Can you just give us a sense of what it was like to grow up in your family, your community?
Oh, that's an interesting question to kick off with. I could talk about that for the next 2 hours. Looking back, I want to say I am one of 7 kids, so you could imagine there's a large family. And at any given time in our house, we had friends who were living with us, cousins, second cousins. So it was a norm to always be surrounded by people. And adding to in terms of I think education, I went to, my parents were both staunch Catholics. I mean, they both passed away. So I went to a Catholic primary school. So Cameroon. Let me take a step back. Cameroon is it's got 10 provinces. So it's in 8 of those provinces you speak French, and in the other 2 you speak English. So my parents originally were from French-speaking part, hence my name with the E at the end. But then my dad had a job in the English-speaking part, so he moved there, and we were all born on that part. So the English-speaking part has got an education system that's after the UK system, because Cameroon was divided after the First World War between England and France. So going to school, I went to a Catholic primary school. And it's what I think I would say it's usual for most kids in Africa. We walk to school every day back and forth. I think it must have been like a mile each way. And I've made a lot of good friends with whom I'm still in touch today. And I went from Catholic primary school to essentially a private school to an elite boarding school, again a Catholic school, so an all boys school. And I think that really shaped my future. One had to be resilient. You could imagine it was 500 boys, and it was run by there were brothers from Ireland. I mean, like Reverend brothers from Ireland. So, we had very strict, like boarding school, you would imagine, strict rules. Waking up at a specific time, breakfast, prayers, church, classes, and so on and so forth. And then high school was also a Catholic private high school. but now it was co-ed. So for the first time after primary school, I was again in class with members of the opposite sex. And I essentially left Cameroon a year or two after high school.
And thank you for giving us just a little bit of an understanding of what it was like for you growing up as a youth. And that kind of leads me into the next question, which is when you were growing up, who were some of the leaders that inspired you? Who did you look up to?
I think even to today, when I look back, I think different people inspired me for different reasons. My dad definitely inspired me to be thoughtful, and I think I credit him for much of my education. He was very, very adamant about his kids having good education. But in terms of really just being a role model, I think of my mom, and she was just super resilient, and she, starting off, she had to walk to her job. She was a nurse, hence also my interest in sciences. I wanted originally to be a medical doctor. So I remember when we were young, I would be the person that if somebody had a cut, and I would be the one to administer, the band-aids, and or go get aspirin from the medicine cabinet, as we called it. I think overall, my mom has really been the person that I looked up to. She had a great heart and was always kind and sharing, and really looked after her kids. And the third person is my elder sister, who like makes us scientist. And she also left Cameroon very early after high school. She moved to the UK to study. So I've always been trying to emulate her in terms of my career. But really driving me towards my current profession, the sciences, was my mom as a nurse. When I went to Germany, my goals were really set to study medicine. But that changed along the way.
Can you kind of walk us through what it was like for you leaving your homeland, leaving Cameroon, and becoming an immigrant? So you lived in...
Moving to Germany, it was really intense. I was 19. By then, my family didn't really have much money. My dad has lost his job. So it's really... It sounds really cliche, but I left home with really, I left Cameroon to Germany. I think I did the math with like $100, and I said, with my sister's help and my mom's help, I said I will make it. So I got a place to study. I think it was biology back then, with the goal to switch ultimately to study medicine, which actually never happened. I moved to Germany in 1996, in late 1996. So it was not unusual to really be the only Black person in the town. So not just a building, but a whole town. So one had to learn how to adapt, to be safe. We all know Germany's history, so there are certain parts we knew to avoid, going to. But then I think ultimately it was really a great experience. I think Germany, after Cameroon, has really shaped my life. And I went to school. I got a degree. I paid $0 for my degree, all the way to PhD. My son, I have a son in Germany, so I have friends I consider family in Germany. I moved to the US. I've been here since 2010, and I think I used to go back to Germany every year when we could travel, sometimes twice a year. So it's been home. I call Germany my home. I'm a German national, and I really think it's really shaped my life in terms of being resilient and being decisive, and setting goals and making sure I achieve those goals. And then the US was, I didn't intend to move to the US. I came for a postdoctoral fellowship. And, it's normally for a few years and then you go back. So I came for a postdoc. That was in Chicago. And I actually went back to Germany. I was in Germany for a year, and then I had an offer to so sorry. So now talking about this, I'm thinking more. So during my first postdoctoral fellowship, my mentor, Dr. Knight, a great lady, a great immunologist, she would always tell me that I should stay in academia because there were very few minorities like me in academia, and I should really think about it. And so I never forgot that. So when I moved back to Germany, I was going to go to industry, which it always ties in with my immigrant background. That I didn't have the opportunity to just do an extended postdoc. I had to always work. So in Germany, if you want to pursue a career in academia, essentially it's like 10, 20 years of doing working, barely making any decent money. So when I went back to Germany after the first postdoctoral fellowship, I had an offer to come back to Rush in Chicago as a junior faculty. I mean, the title was an instructor, which really depends on who you ask. It might be a glorified postdoc, but my contract said junior faculty. And it was an HIV, again, being an African, it was something that was near and dear to my heart. So it was really to understand how people with HIV develop cancers and how we could do to help them. So I was part of this whole group of scientists, looking to cure HIV. And again, it was coming here in 2010, really then, with the goal to pursue a career here. That's when I considered that I moved to the US in 2010. And it was interesting again to really, in Germany, we've met African Americans, you meet them out and, you say hi, you say what's up. But I think since 2010, it's when I really got immersed in what, what the African American history looked like, and what it took for those folks to sacrifice for us as Africans and other immigrants to actually live here.
Well, I really appreciate your insights. I've lived in Europe as well and had much different experiences than you have, but I really appreciated you kind of talking about some of the challenges that you had living in Germany, but also about the connections that you were able to make with African American people that were living in Germany, and the fact that you kind of have said that you recognize that African American people in the United States have really paved the way for other Africans and people from other countries to kind of immigrate here and kind of have some groundwork established in terms of civil rights and things that are extremely important, such as that. So I appreciate your comments on that. I would like you to just shortly elaborate on what a postdoctoral fellowship is, because a lot of our students may not be aware of what that is. So you mentioned previously that you wanted to become a medical doctor, and you were inspired by your mother, who was a great nurse. But then you've ultimately decided to become a biomedical researcher. And so can you just briefly talk about the decision to pursue research, and just briefly, what is a postdoctoral fellowship?
The reason to be, not to pursue medicine, it was purely driven by my conditions. I was literally putting myself through college. So medical school, as most of us know, it takes a lot of work. So the folks I met who in medical school, they didn't have the opportunity to work on the side, to have part-time jobs to pay for their education. So I didn't have that luxury. So I decided, but I knew I still wanted to stay in the field of science and help people ultimately. So I think the biomedical science was a good compromise that, I'm still going to end up helping folks develop drugs, which, help patients. So with a PhD, you essentially you have a project. You're given a project to kind of work on. It kind of paves the way to think on your feet and come up with your experiments. But I think overall it's guided by it's somebody's your mentor essentially gives you a project. So a postdoctoral fellowship is after your PhD, and it's really meant to be the first step towards independence, towards having your own lab, possibly if you stay in academia, and really just coming up with an idea and then a hypothesis, and then set out, design your experiments and a whole project to actually either refute or confirm that hypothesis.
So as we're beginning our Black History Month celebration, I would like to know if you could share your thoughts about some African American people whose lives have inspired you.
I was talking with the past. I would, of course, MLK's, Malcolm X, MLK. Those have been great inspiration. But one person really stands out. I'm not sure the audience. I mean, I'm a scientist like you. I think that kind of colors also my inspiration. I think Henrietta Lacks is a great inspiration. A short background: she was an African American lady who had, I think it was cervical cancer, and she went to Johns Hopkins for treatment, and it took out her cells, and it ended up being it's ended up becoming a tool which has driven the development of so many drugs. So every time when I was in the lab and I would use the cells, and it was just a profound connection. It tied in what I knew about the African American history, and as a scientist, just using those cells to do experiments. I think that was it's always been a profound moment for me. And of course, present inspirations, of course, is President Obama, who I just think has overcome so much and has really been an inspiration to kids out there that a lot is possible. Yeah.
I really appreciate you kind of just giving us some of your insights and sharing information about your life. I would like to ask you at this time if you have any advice for young people. It sounds like you were a young person who had a lot of goals and aspirations, and you were really willing to take a lot of risks and take on new challenges to achieve the things that you wanted to do in life. Just in talking with young people today, how can you encourage them to be willing to take risks and to follow their dreams?
Honestly, I think that's one of the upsides of social media. That if you have it's great to dream, and to make that dream come true. It's easier to reach out to somebody that possibly looks like you and ask for advice. So I would definitely recommend. I could speak mostly for science for kids that are aspiring to become scientists or medical doctors. So I think when I was a postdoc and also at Rush, I think most of those science programs, they have. We always had a summer intern, also a high school, who would just come and spend a few days in the lab every week during the summer, just to kind of get an idea of what lab work would entail. I think that's a good place to start. Reach out to search LinkedIn for scientists and reach out, and I get this request on LinkedIn as well from high school kids and even college kids. How do you end up being a scientist, and not just a scientist, but business development or application scientist, and also through forums like this. I've spoken at a few of those mentoring events, and it's really great when the kids have the opportunity to come up and ask how what you can achieve their goals to become a scientist. I would really say just reach out to a scientist or a medical doctor, and I can speak for myself. I'm always really happy to when kids reach out and young folks reach out to ask for advice, and I'm always happy to take a minute to provide some context in terms of my own career.
And that's really great advice. I think that we all have to kind of rely on our communities and build our communities in order to really network and build our paths forward. At this point, I would just really like to thank you for the generosity of your time and for giving back today and taking a moment to speak with us and to tell us what it was like for you growing up in Africa, what it's been like for you immigrating to different countries, and what it's been like being a scientist. And thank you for reminding us that it's important for people to give back to youth and help them along the way to find their paths forward in life as well. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure. You too. Have a good rest of your day.